This has always been our dream. Come on. When Gwen and I were super young, when I'd have breaks from the fire department, we'd take the car and we'd come out and do the hill country drive. We just fell in love with this whole area. This pasture had what they call the $1 million view. There's just so much history here, and it's beautiful.
For more than 2 decades, Kevin Baum lived in the center of crisis. He started his career in public service as an Austin firefighter and rose through the ranks to acting chief.
I left the city, retired young at age 42.
After retirement, he came here to the Texas Hill Country, one of the most peaceful and treasured parts of the state.
So our dream was always to move to the hill country and kind of live that slower paced life.
He and his wife Gwen started a small ranch on 12 acres.
Moving to the hill country, you're moving away from all of the hustle and bustle of city life.
In many ways, it's his own piece of paradise. In others, he's living right in the middle of an industrial storm.
We're listening to blasting, the backed up alarms on the truck, beep, 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 all hours, day or night, and we're surrounded by stone crushers. They've literally destroyed the tranquility of the space.
Up to 1,500 new residents are pouring into Texas every day. Limestone and other minerals are necessary to build everything from houses to highways. The result? The number of registered quarries and rock production facilities in Texas has multiplied nearly 20 times since 2012.
It's direct correlation with population and expansion and the need for natural resources to support that growth.
Jill Shackelford converted this land in Hays County from a cattle ranch to a quarry in 2011. Here, like at a typical quarry, workers blast several feet down, loosening rock that is then ground into large stockpiles before it is sold to construction companies in Texas and beyond. We crunched state data and found that in 2012, there were 52 registered rock mining operations across the state. Now there are more than 900, many of them controversial quarries. To the north in Williamson County, there are 34 total, more than any other county in the state. And to the west in Burnett County, there are 16 total, more than any other hill country county. In many places, quarry operations and property owners quietly coexist, but in others it's becoming a battleground between dream homes and a multi-billion-dollar business. A 6-month KVUE Defenders investigation has found the industry's growth is outpacing oversight. Quarries face no extensive application process other than permits for certain things like rock crushing equipment. But calculations for those permits about the impacts to the environment are done by the applicant and not the state. The state also hasn't studied the impacts of multiple quarries clustered together. And finally, Texas has no law requiring a quarry operator to restore the land, allowing them to mine, then walk away. Shackelford, now an industry consultant, encourages quarry operators to work with neighbors for common good.
Communicating your blasting schedule if you're blasting, being a resource for the community as far as sponsoring school events and anything that's going on, and just having an open door policy with your neighbors to approach you if they see anything that concerns them.
But others say some operators, including national and international companies moving to Texas, are taking advantage of the state's pro-business culture and lax oversight.
There has to be balance.
State Representative Terry Wilson, a Republican whose district includes Burnett and Williamson counties, says Texas must do more to protect some of the state's most cherished land.
What we'll be looking to do is look to solution sets that doesn't jeopardize the industry while providing public safety and economic development to our communities.
Industry leaders say they are, in fact, tightly regulated by more than a dozen federal, state, and local government agencies. David Perkins is president of the Texas Aggregates and Concrete Association.
The standards that are in place that the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality has are intended to be protective of human health and the environment. And so obviously, if an applicant meets those requirements, they're going to be ensuring that those that are around their operations are not being adversely affected.
Industry leaders say their work is critical to the state's long-term success, a major driver of jobs for the communities around them, and pumping nearly $5 billion to the state's economy. But Baum says he and his neighbors are paying.
This is going into our lungs, and I can almost guarantee you we're going to see silica in it, which is a very dangerous and carcinogenic aerosol from quarry operations. This is what we breathe.
And there's increased big rig traffic along Highway 281 between Burnett and Marble Falls.
Right now, there doesn't seem to be a 50-yard line. There just seems to be an end zone, and over there in the end zone is the corporations in the state. And out here, playing around in the dust is the rest of us who are trying to find out, are we safe?
Baum is now one of several residents taking the lead on pressing lawmakers to study what the industry is doing to the environment, their health, and the hill country itself.
And they're going to keep pushing that envelope until somebody finally says stop. It's the state's job to say stop.
Now, instead of natural beauty, he sees what he fears is a travesty in the making.
They're not just stealing our quality of life, Tony, they're stealing our dreams. Because everybody that lives out here is retired or semi-retired. They work their whole life, right, amassing enough money so that they can build their forever home out here. And these guys are stealing that dream from us.
The rise in quarries is leading to some major clashes between the industry and hill country residents, some of whom are taking matters into their own hands.
And what we really discovered as a citizen group, we had really no voice.
Next, we'll take you inside some of those fights. Welcome to Double Horn, Texas. Population 230. As towns go, this community along Texas 71 on the edge of the Texas Hill Country is young, not even a year old, and already it's fighting for its life. Drive past the gates and ease into town and you'll see houses, but no stores or even a town hall.
We incorporated because we wanted to protect our citizens, and that certainly is about the health and safety of our citizens.
Kathy Serino was elected Double Horn's first mayor in February.
But it's also about property values and property rights. And what we really discovered as a citizen group, we had really no voice.
Last year, Double Horn residents saw a sign along the highway about a planned rock mining quarry that immediately got many in the community worried. Double Horn is already across the highway from another large quarry, and landowners knew the new operation would bring more traffic to an already dangerous highway. The proposed quarry was sandwiched between two residential tracts of land that make up Double Horn.
It's right literally in our backyard.
We have two existing neighborhoods.
They mobilized to stop it, only to learn they were too late. Spicewood Crushed Stone, part of a larger New York company, had already gotten necessary permits from the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, which regulates quarries across the state. That's when Double Horn residents turned to an unusual option, incorporating as a town to try to put local quarry restrictions in place.
It would give us that voice, that ability to exert some control over the future development and safety of the area.
We're looking to our communities to help themselves.
State Representative Terry Wilson, a Burnett County Republican, proposed several bills this past legislative session that would have added new regulations to quarries. None passed.
Without the rules in place, without oversight in place, they're having to do things that isn't normal.
Quarry opponents say the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality has done a poor job measuring the impacts on wildlife and the land, particularly when large groups of quarries cluster together in one spot, like in the hill country. Industry leaders say they are among the most regulated business in Texas, with federal, state, and local agencies watching over them.
It's about at 1,000 feet there.
Grant Dean has worked as a hill country developer for decades. When he learned about a planned quarry 3,000 feet from his home, he immediately got worried it would decrease his property value and his quality of life.
We have quarries here and more of them all the time that you pass by every day, and until you're really introduced to them, you're not very well aware of what the activities are behind those walls.
At the same time, Marble Falls city officials got worried too. They feared the quarry would hurt growth of the tourist town.
Asphalting has got to go!
The plan drew protest in Marble Falls that included the mayor.
Everybody is doing what they can do legally and publicly like this to show this is just a bad fit for our community.
while the city, dean, and other plaintiffs also filed a lawsuit against TCEQ. They claim the agency too freely approves permits for quarries. A year and a half later, the lawsuit is still not resolved. But the proposed site now has a for sale sign, and neighbors hope the company has chosen to move on.
We are not anti-mining. We are by no means looking for anybody's jobs. We just know that there is a better way for everyone to do business to where we can all become better neighbors.
Double Horn hasn't been as successful. Soon after becoming a town in a narrow vote last fall, the Texas Attorney General's office sued the community, citing a technicality in state law. The agency says, quote, "This is simply about defending the rule of law and preventing the abuse of power by a neighborhood."
We are law-abiding. We believe we absolutely followed the law to incorporate, and we had no intention in putting ourselves in a position where we would end up in litigation.
A judge has ruled in Double Horn's favor. Now the state is appealing. Mayor Serino says legal fees, which already top $15,000, are depleting the town's budget, leaving officials relying on charity.
It's a financial drain on the city. We have no revenue, tax revenue yet, so this is coming out of the pockets of the citizens and folks that donate.
Now, Double Horn residents must wait for an answer about whether they will keep their hill country life as it is, or be forced to make room for a new neighbor. The explosive growth of quarries is not tightly regulated. Up next, we'll show you why efforts to rein them in have not gotten very far at the state capitol. For more than a decade, state lawmakers have flirted with putting new regulations in place for the state's rock mining industry. But over the years, some of those ideas have failed to take hold. It's all against the backdrop of a rising number of rock mining quarries in the Texas Hill Country. Take a wild ride on the Rattler, a roller coaster at Six Flags Fiesta Texas in San Antonio. It is built against the red clay wall of what used to be a rock mining quarry. Today, Six Flags Fiesta Texas stands as an example of what can happen after mining on a piece of huge land is finished, then developed into something else. But nothing in Texas requires restoration of quarry land.
I was really surprised to understand, frankly, Texas is number 50, if you will, in terms of managing or providing oversight on surface mining.
This legislative session, led in part by State Representative Terry Wilson, lawmakers proposed 24 bills to increase oversight of the rock mining industry in Texas.
There is very little regulation on surface mining.
The bills would have created an array of new regulations, including a more thorough application process and routine air monitoring for areas around quarries. Bills also would have included a so-called reclamation law, requiring quarry operators to take steps to restore the land before selling it. Multiple other states have such laws. Texas does not. There were hours of testimony and questions from lawmakers on the issues, but ultimately the dozens of bills did not pass.
When you look at this holistically, we should be able to place protections in communities.
Over the past 15 years, Texas lawmakers have considered new laws for quarries, many of them proposed in this report, ordered by Governor Rick Perry in 2005. It recommended many of the same measures Wilson and other lawmakers proposed in the 2019 legislative session 14 years later. Critics point to another reason they say the state has never fully addressed the concerns of neighboring landowners. They say it all comes down to money. According to a KVUE Defenders analysis, the Texas Aggregates and Concrete Association gave nearly $400,000 in campaign contributions, including tens of thousands of dollars to political leaders such as Governor Greg Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. David Perkins, head of the association, says it participates in the state's political process, including campaign contributions, to ensure the industry will be heard at the Capitol.
And I think that's one of the greatest things about our state and about our country is the ability to engage and to have dialogue and dynamics with those who represent you and be involved in that process.
And speaking of money, Perkins points out that the industry brings plenty to Texas. The association says its members pump $4.8 billion to the state economy each year and provides thousands of jobs. The group has also consistently impressed on the legislature the necessity of their work for the state's continued growth.
The roads, the sidewalks, the homes, the churches, the schools, the offices, all of those structures and all of that infrastructure has to be done. The water infrastructure has to be provided for those folks.
Perkins says if the industry is forced into more costly regulation, those fees could be passed on to consumers. But lawmakers like Wilson say Texas must keep pushing for more quarry regulation, strike a better balance between property owners and big business. The path forward sparking strong emotion. We saw that firsthand when we invited Hill Country residents to meet with industry officials and state regulators. What everyone agrees should happen next. A couple of weeks after our series, we went back out to the Hill Country. We wanted to give residents a chance to ask their questions firsthand to industry officials and state regulators. At times, frustrations reached a boiling point.
You weren't there, sir, and you ought to be ashamed of yourself, because at the end of the day, 3 meetings, you had no solution sets on the table whatsoever.
In a crowded meeting room, hundreds of Hill Country residents came to listen, to learn, and to be heard.
View modeling.
Not true.
It is true, and you can...
For those who feel the industry is encroaching on their property and their way of life, State Representative Terry Wilson became their biggest ally.
There's a point where saturation will ruin lives.
He says he is fighting for new rules on quarries, but he warns he and other residents have a major force working against them.
The lobby is extremely powerful. We've had plenty of meetings with them, but they sit at the end of the table and they listen. They do. They listen very, very well. What we need is action.
Action in terms of routine air monitoring and a state study about the impacts of multiple quarries clustered together. Forum participants were invited to write their questions on note cards, then posed by discussion moderator, our own Terry Gruca.
Is there anything that can be done even at a local level?
Many of them wondered about dust emissions from the operations, others about increased traffic and damage the industry does to roads. David Perkins, who heads the Texas Aggregates and Concrete Association, says his industry wants people to know the business is tightly controlled.
Do I agree that there are improvements that can be made? Absolutely. There are improvements and enhancements that can be made all the time.
Representative Wilson promises that he will keep working and believes that when lawmakers return to the Capitol next spring, they will be ready to hear what he and other Hill Country residents have to say.
I think there's some very simple things that our citizens are asking for that we should meet.
As he works toward that goal, Wilson and others fear the beloved Texas Hill Country is at stake. Pieces of paradise that help define the beauty of Texas.